Testing. I think so. I'm testing it now. Thank you. Looks like it is, but.
How's your knee?
Pretty good, thanks. Appreciate that.
Huh?
I'm doing all right.
Just give me 1 minute. If you
Made
could.
it.
I wanna
You'll be
take-
glad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Okay.
So, before you, Nate rented a house over on Wall Street.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did already do my,
Are you going with him?
this is the, we've been over for 25 years.
But you don't stay in your place?
Oh, no, we always wanted a big house out in Norway. So now I'm staying down the street, now I'm paying to stay down the street with these.
Yeah.
It's a 29 years that we've gone
Really?
since law
Really?
school. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this year we did.
It's a nice house.
It is, that's really nice. It's bigger than I thought it was. So
You wanna
we're
go
not
through it,
all
let me
over
know.
the-
Wanna go through it, let me know.
Is that?
Well, Are you here overnight?
Yeah, no. I'm not staying overnight.
No, no, okay.
I'll be surprised when we get there. You feel like a shooting.
All right, let's get started, guys. Okay, good evening, everybody. Regular meeting of Cape May City Planning Board session, and in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act of 1975, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided. Should any member of this board have reason to believe this meeting is being held in violation of that act, they shall so state at this time. Hearing none, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, roll call, Karen?
Yes. Mr. Becerre.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Crowley.
Here.
Mr. Gorgone.
Here.
Mayor Mullick. Councilmember Yeager.
Here.
Mrs. Reed. Mr. Lundholm.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Malloy. Mr. Paducis.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have resolution for adoption 12-12, 2023, 555 Elmira LLC,
This resolution first.
Block 1061, Lot 16. I have one correction on the resolution, and I gotta find it, but it states it's in the Historic District, Craig, which it's not. Paragraph number 20. It was specifically brought up that night.
What was the question, Bill?
There's not a question. The resolution, we're memorializing the subdivision that Tommy O'Hara did,
Right?
and this resolution states it's in the historic district, but it's not. It's not subject to HPC review, and that was specifically mentioned
We
that
talked
night.
about that,
We
right?
did. So it should come out of the resolution.
You okay with that, Craig?
Yeah,
You know where I get those from. so-
yeah, I'm going off of memory, and I know that we talked about it.
Yeah.
Do you want me to check the list?
You have to, it's not the list, it's the district itself. It wouldn't be on the list because it's a vacant lot.
Well, sometimes,
All the block and lots are listed.
Okay, well, we'll check it, but I mean,
Yeah.
I believe it was, because I remember Chris McDowell getting up and questioning it, and I think the mayor might have said it wasn't on the list. It's either that, or we could just change it to say, if it's in the historic district, it's subject to approval, you know, if you want to make it easy.
I'd rather do that.
Okay,
oh,
That's the
It's-
easiest
okay,
correction.
that's fine. Then just change that to read that if the project is located within the historic district, their approval is required.
I'll make a motion to approve it, subject to those changes.
do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Jones, seconded by Councilmember Yeager. Mr. Gorgone?
Yes.
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mrs. Reed? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Crowley?
Yes.
Mr. Lundholm?
Yes.
Mr. Paducis?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Bezare?
Yes.
Thank you.
For the record, Mayor Mullock has joined us. Problem? Just doing some house cleaning. All right, next item is minutes of November 28th. Any corrections to that? The motion for approval?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Jones, seconded by Mr. Lundholm. Mr. Gorgon?
Abstain.
Mayor Mullock?
Abstain.
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mr. Crowley?
Yes.
Mr. Lundholm?
Yes.
Mr. Paducis?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Bezare?
Abstain.
Thank you.
Was not there. All right, we have the application tonight is Mitchell Botcher and Gay Pesolano, 1209 Lafayette Street, Block 1061, lots 83.02 for a minor subdivision and variance relief. How are you? Andrew, how are you?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Andrew Catanese of the Monzo Catanese DeLawless Law Firm.
Why don't we swear everybody in who's going to be giving
If you'd
testimony?
like to start, that's fine.
Ms. Halberton, you're going to testify as well?
I expect a yes.
Okay. We're also going to swear in our board engineer. Folks, if you can please raise your right hand. Do each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. This application is presented on behalf of Gay Pesolano and Mitch Betcher. They are the owners of the subject property. It's located at 1209 Lafayette Street. It is a pre-existing and existing oversized, really substantially oversized lot in the R2 zoning district on the northwest side of Lafayette Street. So as you enter town, it's on your right, running all the way back to Cape Island Creek. Currently, the property is the site of the Betcher and Pesolano primary residence, a single-family home, set back some 265 feet from Lafayette Street, and it's generally aligned with the other two deep houses along that section of the road. They're requesting approval this evening to subdivide the lot to create a fully conforming lot that fronts on Lafayette Street, suitable for a new single-family home, providing access to their existing home via a shared driveway to the rear. There are no variances associated with the front lot. It'll be fully conforming in all respects. The retention or creation of the back lot with the existing home on it triggers the need for a planning variance, which is a little different. It's unlike a variance that typically flows from the local ordinance, this is a variance under the municipal land use law. Because Section 35 of the land use law says that lots generally should front on a street, but Section 36 of the land use law says that relief may be granted where there are practical difficulties or hardship, or under a catch-all category where the circumstances of the case do not require frontage on the street, so long as there's adequate access for firefighting and other emergency vehicles, and we think that's satisfied here. Ancillary to that, the rear lot, like I said, will not meet the local lot frontage requirement. Effectively, it's the same relief. The lot in the back will be fully conforming, but for the fact that it won't touch Lafayette Street. You'll have to take the easement to get back there. Mr. Halbrunner will review the plans. He'll explain why we think this is appropriate and entirely consistent with this unusual neighborhood. Mr. Betcher and Ms. Pesolano are here should we have a need for questions. And I know we have had Mr. Halbrunner, I think, before this board before. We offer him as an expert in planning and engineering.
We will accept,
An architect.
we will accept them.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to turn it over to you to start with existing conditions.
Sure. As you mentioned in your opening statements, we have a lot that is, by comparison to the zones, extremely large. It's about 46,000 square feet in lot area. For comparison purposes, in the R2 zoning district that we're situated, the minimum lot size is 7,500. So we're like 6 times what the minimum lot size is in its current configuration. We have 60-foot of frontage along Lafayette Street, and we have, on average, about 766 foot in depth. So the lot is, by all measures, oversized. It's developed with a relatively recently constructed 3-bedroom house. It was constructed circa 2021, and it's set back from Lafayette Street some 265 feet. So there is 265-foot of front yard between Lafayette Street now and the existing modest three-bedroom home. The home is accessed vehicularly by a driveway on the northern side of the property. That driveway and the associated curb cut is going to remain unchanged throughout this entire proposed development. For context purposes, again, we're in the zoning of the R2 zoning district, and the configuration for which we are proposing to create, a lot in front or a house in the front and a house in the back, is actually quite typical for the stretch of houses along the northwest side of Lafayette Street. And perhaps it'd be helpful to refer to an aerial photograph. This has not been introduced to you before, so I'll pose an exhibit.
It's Exhibit A1, which is an aerial.
Side view, so the right way. And what you're looking at is an aerial exhibit from a aerial photograph of 2022, taken from the county GIS website. Here we have Lafayette Street, and our subject parcel, boy, this doesn't get tight to see this, doesn't it, is here. So we're about a third of the way between Union Street and the nearest cross street up near the skeleton.
You want to see? No, just trying to,
Turn that
can't
a
see.
little bit, so
I'm sorry.
Mr. Gorgon,
Just a little.
Mr. Jones can see it.
Need a spotlight, too.
Now Rick can't see.
Maybe magnifying glass.
Never mind, Rick.
Never mind, Rick.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm not sure how best I can do this. Let me get this out of the way first.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Crowley.
There you go.
Is that helpful? Okay, happy to use it. All right, so the subject property is,
You guys can't see it, can you?
Don't
We
worry,
can
don't
see it.
worry.
It's
All
all
right, go ahead,
I knew
go
we knew
ahead.
where it is.
There's a lot of lots like this on
is here.
this.
So we have two properties immediately to the south of us, both of which are identically configured. The one immediately adjacent to us and the one next to that. It happens to be that neither of those have yet developed the lots created behind us. The one immediately to the south was created by subdivision in the past couple of years. If we go 6 properties to the north of us, closer to the way out of town, we have 6 properties, of which we have 5 of them, which you'll see houses are developed behind the primary houses on the front. They're created by way of either flag lots or by, like what we're proposing, an easement across the house along the front. So in total, we have 8 properties, 9 including ourselves. But of those 8 properties, 7 of them are ideally configured essentially the same as what we're proposing to do. So I bring that to demonstrate that what we're proposing is certainly not unique to this neighborhood. It's entirely consistent with the nature of the development along the neighborhood. Whose flashlight should I return this to? And that's helpful, I think, when it comes to context, because what we're proposing is substantially similar, in fact, virtually identical, to the pattern of development along the stretch of Lafayette Street.
John, you mentioned that some of those were recently created. The flag lot behind the lot immediately to the left, or I guess southwest of this, that was subdivided in 2008.
2008, correct,
And then in 2010, the other side was subdivided again to create a flag lot behind a front lot.
correct. So the takeaway from that is these are not existing conditions that have developed since long before the ordinance was created. They're actually conditions that have been created by approval very recently.
Thank you.
Chinese, can I ask you a question? Those ones that created a flag lot, were they 60 feet wide or were they bigger?
To the southwest was 65, to the north, to the northeast was 75. Now, they are a little different because there's a flagpole portion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they were flag lots because they had enough space to create a flag lot and not require a variance for the existing lot?
I'm not sure that's, well,
No,
let's see.
At those widths, you would have required,
One of them yes, one of them no.
I think that's right.
Well, my chairman
Yeah.
asked me if I thought easement versus flag lot, and my answer was, well, given this width, it has to be, there's gonna be an easement somewhere unless there's 2 driveways.
And that's the other thing that
Right.
Mr. Halburn is going to speak to, is one of the things that we think is nice about the easement is instead of 2 driveways side by side with 2 curb cuts and all that impervious or semi-pervious paving, we're going to have a single driveway from the street that promotes green space, and John will speak to that.
I'll say what he just said. Yeah, actually, to the point, we examined both configurations early on. What was going to be optimum? And there's two principal reasons why we chose the easement with no flag lot. First of all, we're able to create a fully conforming lot in the front. No lot variance, width variance is required for the front lot. It's fully conforming. That house, when it's developed, is going to need a driveway. Why not have that very same driveway that's going to service that house, help service the house in the back? Then we have one curb cut, more open space and green space. Certainly is going to make the county happy. The county is always looking to minimize driveway entrances into their right-of-way, and it also facilitates their requirement that no vehicles back out on the county right-of-way. So we killed a lot of birds with one stone with that.
Could you make sure your mics are on and close to you?
I got a
Definitely
question.
on.
I got a question.
He
When,
was talking to me. He was being polite, not calling me out, but it was me.
when the mother lot, 83.02 was created, what'd you say, 4 years ago?
The property that's to the south of us.
No, the subject property, 83.02. When,
Subject property?
yeah, when was that created?
I honestly don't know. We did an Oprah request for the city records, and it came back blank as to when that subdivision that created our current lot, so we don't know.
I mean, the question I had was, when that was created, was there anything prohibiting your lot to be redivided? That's the only question I have.
Yeah, we submitted an open records request to the city to ask for any planning or zoning board resolutions for this property.
Okay.
We received that back with no records, so there's
I
no
will
restrictions.
bet you this predates zoning.
Okay.
It's just a weird number for that.
I mean, this is a, no, this, I'm trying to recall what we could have done. We may have just, or may have been like an A and B and just changed it to B to a .02 number. Could have been, if it's that old. I'm trying to think.
Post office ran out of numbers.
They provided that, so I brought it up. Whenever I see a decimal number on an application, I know that it's been previously subdivided. I mean, it's a big indicator. So I always ask, all right, you need to give us the resolution for any past approvals. They provided the evidence that they asked for, that they submitted an Oprah request and received no information back from the city. So,
When you say no information, they got something back saying they didn't have anything? Is that what they
yes,
said? Okay.
correct.
Okay.
There's no, in your title history, there's no map referenced or?
There's no, we didn't go back through title. What we did was we submitted an open records request to the city asking for all resolutions.
I guess we could have missed it, though. I mean, is there a deed? Do you have the deed for the property?
There is a deed, and it contained no restriction within the current deed that would have said anything to the point of prohibiting this.
It didn't reference a map?
It may very well have, I don't have that information at my fingertips.
Bill, this discussion we're having here, was this property already subdivided?
No.
No?
No, well, I'll put it, the question is, when was the larger lot, initial lot, when was it subdivided? And the answer is they don't know. They've requested records from the city. The city doesn't have any records of the planning board, zoning board, or anybody granting a variance for, or subdividing the lot. There's no record of it.
Correct.
The only record there might be, which Rich is asking, is if in the deed, if it makes reference to a deed book and page number, or a plat, or a recorded subdivision, which they don't have that answer.
The honest answer to that is it probably does. I just don't have that file map at my fingertips to be able to tell you when it was created.
At some point, the lot lines were drawn.
All that was.
Oh, sure.
It just sounds like a modern lot number that sounds like it was created through a subdivision.
Like I said, for our part, when we saw it, thinking it perhaps would have been a modern subdivision, that was the reason for the open records request.
I have internal records that date back to '95 when I started working for the city, and it did not show up in my records. So I believe it at least predates 1995.
Let
What,
me ask you a question.
what could-
How long have the applicants owned this property?
2012.
2019?
And when you bought it, was it any indication in that it was subdivided in some way? I mean, when you
Your
close,
microphones, please.
Sorry. In 2019, there was no indication that I know of that, I mean, it was a vacant lot that was available and I bought it. I did my due diligence to make sure that I could build on it.
They got clear title.
okay, so a title search, if it were officially subdivided, wouldn't that have turned up in a title search?
It depends on when. It could.
2019.
A reference to a title search may reference, as shown on a subdivision plat created at such and such another
1925.
time, but
Yeah,
it
it
may
was
not.
subdivided in
Yeah.
1988, comprising Lot 83.02 on plan of subdivision, lots 82 and 83, prepared by William Sweeney, dated June 19, looks like 88. So it's got a plan of subdivision somewhere. It's just 1988. And so it exists, it's just, all right, well,
But there's no restrictions on it.
I don't know. It's a plan of subdivision. I have no idea what it says.
And the purchasers in 2019 were not aware that what you just found there, Rich,
It's in their deed.
It's in their deed.
It's in the deed to them.
I mean, all lots are subdivided at some point or another. They need to be created. Lot lines are drawn, all over town. So there's nothing that would have triggered any issue or
so you
concern.
bought two lots then?
I
Rogers.
bought one lot.
No,
Barbara Rogers.
no, that's what the conversation about was it subdivided. I want to make sure we're not losing sight of what that means. All these lots were created in some form or another to create the existing lot lines. Mr. Betcher, Ms. Puzzolano bought it in 2019, back to lot lines that were created perhaps in 1988.
Right, but we put conditions and limitations on subdivisions all the time on the subdivision map, and there's obviously a map, so it's just, I mean, I'm not trying to make a problem for you, I'm just saying, but there's a map, I mean, we have to, so the fact that we didn't come up with in the Oprah request for 30 years the copy of the map, I mean, that happens, but I mean, there's a map, so, all right, well, it is what it is, go ahead.
Would you like to go over the proposed layout?
Sure. What we're proposing to do is to take the front portion of the lot, the first 145 feet of it, and create a new lot, Lot A3.02. That lot would have the same 60-footer frontage along Lafayette Street. It'd be 145 feet deep. It would result in 8,700 square foot of lot area. Again, comparing that for bulk conformity, the minimum lot area in that zone is 7,500 square feet. So we're some 16% above the minimum lot area required. And it's being created to develop a new single-family home. The remaining parcel, the parcel with the existing home, will again remain 60 feet wide. It'll have some average depth of 620 feet yet, and 37,260 square feet, which still remains some 5 times larger than the minimum lot area required for the zone. And that house will be, would you refer to the exhibit?
If you would.
Okay. The next sheet I'm bringing up was part of your plan set. This is not new. This is the site grading and utility plan that I mounted. So the first 145 feet is the new lot we're creating, and then the western, the balance of the parcel is the parcel that will keep the existing single-family home on it. Again, the existing driveway curb cut will be maintained, while the 15-foot wide easement on the newly created lot, affording the driveway access to the back property, and the 60-foot wide by 145-foot wide lot on the front half is again a fully conforming lot in terms of the R2 zoning district requirements.
Can I ask a question? Where was the 145 foot of depth? How was that arrived at?
Balancing between lot coverage and setbacks. We could have made it the absolute minimum, but the design that we provided was a nice balance between the lot coverage, building coverage, and the,
I guess I'm sort of thinking the other way. If you would have made it deeper, you'd be able to get more parking in the back of the house.
so more what?
Parking behind the house. Right now, you've got space for 3 cars.
which is compliant with the number of
I
bedrooms there.
understand that, but if you can create more parking for something on Lafayette Street, it would probably make, and I don't know, again, if there's anything that's, I'm throwing that out there just to, everybody knows Lafayette Street's a nightmare.
Well, frankly, I think even with the proposed conditions we have now, lot coverage would allow us to expand that parking to additional space. I want to check that before I, yeah, we're, wait a minute, I'm sorry, let me get to the right zone. Additional. Yeah, we're at 39% now, 40% is the maximum.
Right.
So in order for us to create another parking space, we're going to need to,
Another 10 feet of depth.
correct, 180 square feet of coverage, which would put us,
I just think these folks would hopefully know that if it didn't hurt anything, and you made it 10 feet deeper, you're going to get more parking.
I mean,
I don't know if you guys thought of it or not,
If you take a look at
Honestly, we only need 50
sheet
more.
C, if you look at sheet C-101, the next sheet, the parking area that's
We
shown
almost-
is
almost
showing
there.
3 parking spaces.
correct.
But they're centered on that large concrete pad. I think if you shifted them over, you could probably fit one with actually not increasing your lot coverage.
you're absolutely right, it's that pad is 38 feet wide. So it can accommodate 4 9-foot parking spaces with some left over.
Maybe
How much
maybe
space
get
is
5
there
in.
between the pad and the back line of the lot?
I don't want more than 4 cars in front of our house.
That is going to be approximately, see if I can give you a harder number. The scale, that's approximately 10 feet. 10 feet, right? 10 feet.
So you theoretically could do what our engineer said, slide those spaces over and then use that section right there for parking too?
No, actually, what the engineer was indicating, and I'm agreeing with, is the size of the paver pad we have now,
Yeah.
in which those 3 parking spaces are shown. The total width of that pad is 38 feet. So we can already fit 4 cars in that pad with no further modifications to the plan. We're graphically depicting 3 parking spaces, which is conforming, but we can, within that same space, accommodate a 4th space.
I mean, they're only required to have two parking spots, but it just makes sense if. in my
Yeah,
mind.
I don't have a problem with that, but that empty space there could be a parking space too. That would be 4, that would be 5 parking spaces.
But to answer your original question, Mr. Brazier, we were balancing the lot coverage and maintaining as much of the property for the rear property in which the applicants actually will continue to own and operate.
I figured that.
It's a couple feet.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were in the middle of your presentation.
Good questions. So I think in terms of describing the proposed conditions, we probably covered most of what I wanted to cover, which was really reemphasizing that the driveway we're using exists. The driveway location remains the same. We're going to formalize it by way of an easement. We're going to improve that part of the easement on the new lot with open jointed pavers. Those pavers end at our rear property line. I know one of the comments by Mr. Hurlis was, should we consider extending those pavers further into the rear lot? I might as well jump into that now, as we're going to address it at some point. We certainly can. The reason we did not is really couple-fold. One of which is, it's a nice demarcation and clear indicator for both owners where the property begins and ends. The gravel that's there for the driveway, on the existing driveway that will remain in place for the rear lot is hard-packed gravel that'll certainly adequately support the weight of any emergency vehicles that may need to access it. So there's really no benefit, from my perspective, of carrying those pavers further. This purpose of it serving to demark the property line is helpful, I think, for all parties involved. And there's no real harm in keeping the gravel on the rear lot side of it, in my opinion. In fact, insofar as emergency access is concerned, we'll want to cover that when we start talking about the variance we need. But we did have the fire chief and police department review the plans, and they've approved it with no further comments. So they're satisfied that the width, the access, and the surface was satisfactory for their needs. Probably last thing worth noting is the alignment, as we're proposing it, does help maintain consistency within the neighborhood. The rear building, as it's situated today, is in general alignment with the other 5 or 6 properties up and down Lafayette Street. The new property we're creating in the front will have a building much closer to Lafayette Street, which again is much more consistent with all the properties that are up along Lafayette Street. And it avoids what the HPC likes to call the missing tooth. When you have uniformity in the street and suddenly one lot is missing in that pattern, it's like having a large gap in your teeth. It's called a missing tooth. Something the HPC discourages. They actually encourage consistency in the street alignment. So the house we're proposing on the new front lot will help eliminate that missing tooth phenomenon or situation and establish more consistency in the neighborhood and consistency with the intent of the HPC design guidelines. And if there's no other questions about what we're proposing, we'll probably start talking about the variances and the standards for that.
I think so. I just want to speak to the emergency access, unless you're planning to cover that, and specifically about the area that's existing as it is today, proposed to remain in front of the house in the rear, because there's really a large area there for emergency vehicles.
There is. Referring back to the sheet C-101. Try not to block Mr. Lindholm's view of it here. And as we come down, you see the shaded part of this sheet plan shows better. Shaded part ends, that's the demarcation of the property line. And then the house is here. As the driveway comes to here, all this here now is a large open gravel area that can be used for parking and turnaround. So clearly, access and turning around and exiting the property is of no concern, even for larger vehicles.
And both the front and the rear house, again, I think you may have mentioned this, will have the ability to turn cars around. No one will be backing out onto Lafayette Street.
Absolutely. This has been reviewed hypercritically by the county for that specific item, and we've demonstrated to their and everyone's satisfaction that no backing out onto Lafayette Street is.
Is there some restriction for parking on that driveway, that would be in the deed?
The easement document will have language that would prohibit someone from prohibiting any vehicle to travel up and down the track.
Yeah, well, you would need it, because it's only, you couldn't park a car in it without blocking access for the other. Yeah, you know, in some sense, those single-lane driveways are
Well, when you
better.
sell the house, in the front, and the people in the back, it's blocked, they would need something legally saying, you're not,
Well,
you can't do that.
yeah, that's my job, to make sure that it's clear that it cannot be obstructed at any time for any reason. All right, so Mr. Halbrunner, I indicated this is a variance from section 35 of the land use law, and specified that it can be granted where there's hardship, practical difficulties, or the circumstances don't require it, as long as we have adequate access for firefighting. In your opinion, does this application meet that standard?
It does. The key being that we are maintaining proper adequate access for firefighting and emergency vehicles. We're providing that because the easement still provides the same or enough of an access to allow vehicles to enter, turn around, and exit, and further reinforced by both the fire department and the police department reviewing and approving the configuration. So clearly, there is adequate access for those emergency vehicles, and I think that then qualifies for the special circumstances where the case doesn't require it. The whole point of having the requirement at the front on approved roads to make sure those emergency services are available, and they clearly are here.
Now, to the extent that there is a lot frontage requirement in the local code, it's really the same variance, but we don't meet that. Would that fall under the hardship or the broad C standards of the municipal land use law?
I think there's applicability from both. If we first look at the hardship, you may first say, how is there hardship? But if you think about it, we have a fully conforming lot width and a lot area that's more than 6 times the normal or minimum lot size within the zone. So a lot of that size should practically be able to be developed with more than one single-family home, but we couldn't do it without this type of relief. So I think that creates an exceptional hardship on the applicant.
That's a result of the narrowness of the lot?
Yeah, the narrowness and extreme length of the lot, combined with the unique shape giving its narrowness.
And are there any purposes of zoning advanced by the application?
I think there's two. As I mentioned earlier, the missing tooth situation is eliminated by the proposed development, so we're establishing consistency of the streetscape, which is advancing one of the standards of the HBC, which is, one of the purposes of municipal land use law, is to promote the historic districts. And then, second of all, kind of in a similar vein, we are preserving the character of the neighborhood. Right now, we're one of the oddballs out. We have 8 properties in a row, and we're the one that doesn't really comply. By doing this, we're going to be more consistent with our immediate neighborhoods and preserving the character of that neighborhood. So I think those are both purposes of the municipal land use law that are being advanced by the application.
And what about the negative criteria?
Well, what could the negative be? We're seeking lot width variance and from chapter 35. Both of them.
Lot frontage.
Frontage, I'm sorry, lot frontage.
Because to be clear, the width is conforming.
Correct, I'm sorry, lot frontage. The potential negative from granting that relief is not having adequate access for emergency vehicles. Well, again, we satisfied that, so the potential negative that might result doesn't apply, and hence there is no negative effect, and the positives, therefore, significantly outweigh the detriments.
And, John, one thing we did speak to, just circling back to that question of a flag lot versus an easement. Your take on one driveway versus two, do you think it benefits the neighborhood to minimize that driveway, the curb cut, and basically concentrate that into one space?
Absolutely. One driveway means one point of access, vehicles not entering at the same time. And more importantly, from a streetscape perspective, we've got at least 15 feet more width, if not more, of greenery and landscaping instead of another hard surface driveway that would be necessary if we didn't share the driveway.
Anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I think this is a good, strong application. I would be happy to answer any questions.
On the subdivision issue, I'm not even sure there was a subdivision map. It's referencing a survey of subdivision, and they may have just done it by deed, because I can see deeds going out in 1998, left and right, so it's unlikely there's a restriction on that map. It doesn't seem like it's a modern map with those kinds of things in it. It is helpful, though, that, in my opinion, and I'm not saying this about you, I'm just saying it in general, that I don't think just an open request without a response is a full enough picture as to the obligations to produce any approvals of which you're aware, and the fact that we can't track it down, the applicant still has to kind of tell us if there's a map that they know of that has a restriction or a deed that references some zoning approval restriction, because it's, you know, some of these are 20 or 30 years old, and there may be stuff that the applicant knows of that we don't, and I still think if they're going to testify truthfully and fully, they have to tell us about that stuff, but I don't think you're keeping anything secret. I'm just saying I don't view an open request, the fact that we don't find it is carte blanche to not disclose restrictions known to the applicant. So the duty isn't, they're two independent things. But
And I want to make sure the
you-
record's
you don't-
clear.
You don't know of anything, so that's fine.
Yeah, are you aware of any restrictions or any special conditions on this property?
No.
Good enough for me.
Okay, so your presentation is complete?
That's our presentation.
Okay,
I have a question for the applicant.
okay.
The applicant owns the subject lot, right, before current lot and dwelling that's on there.
Correct.
Yes.
They're building a new lot in the front, a new dwelling in the front.
Yes.
Are you going to own both of these? Or are you selling off the front property to be developed?
Our intention is to develop it. Honestly, our friends are here. We're hoping to develop it for our friends
Okay.
to move into.
So the reason I ask that question is, a lot of times when these things happen, like in this case, and this is a little different situation than the subdivisions, minor subdivisions that we've been getting lately, because these plans are actually have designs on them. So we know what they're proposing to build. In some of these cases where we just get a strict subdivision, they put a line on the plan, and we have no idea what's going to happen with the property. It could be sold off, a new developer comes in, and they're not aware of the conditions that are set on the board. So we ask for a deed restriction to be placed so that when they do a title search, it comes up and the future purchaser knows what requirements that we have. So in this case, I don't think we need that. If they're maintaining it, they're developing it, and they may sell it to the people that are actually here tonight, witnessing this application. So they're going to be aware of the conditions that are set on the thing. That was the reason for my question. Thank you.
Bill?
Sure, Dennis.
This is probably going to sound like a dumb question, but we're only here tonight to approve the lot frontage issue.
The subdivision.
Right.
Which requires a lot frontage variance.
Right, right. Why are we being given plans to the house?
It's required.
It's required that,
We usually waive all these requirements. When we get those blank subdivision plans, we have a laundry list of waivers. And we typically grant those, and then we put that deed restriction on there that says, you have to provide all the stuff that you didn't give us at the time of subdivision approval before you can get a construction permit.
Yeah, they're a step further than most people.
So, yeah, so this is a more comprehensive plan than what we usually see. This is what you should see all the time.
so let me ask you a question about that. On the plans on C-101, is it correct you're showing that the side setback of this house on the south side of it is 5 feet?
Correct.
And that's,
That's what's allowed in the R2 zone. Total of 15 feet, side yard, minimum of 5 on one side, so it's 10 and 5, 9 and 6.
so you're, I think you're suggesting to me that we, as we act tonight, will approve both the variance in front of us and these house plans?
Well, the house plans doesn't require a variance, so if they deviated from those plans such that they built it 3 feet from the side yard, they need to get a variance for that. Or if they went into the front setback, or the rear setback, or the height, and all the bulk things still apply, they just,
Correct. The front lot,
that's-
all development on the front lot will 100% fully conform. We submitted the plans because we had them. They were ready. We wanted to show you what the game plan was for the property. If there are minor adjustments in the plan, that may happen, but within the confines of zoning.
I mean, Dennis, this
Okay.
plan is nothing more than if somebody owns a vacant lot,
No,
and they get plans, they take it to the construction office, if they meet all those setbacks, they get a permit, they don't have to
Yeah,
come in
I
front of us.
wanted to hear that.
Okay.
but I don't think that, I just want to, because I want to jam the applicant up, and I don't want to jam us up. I don't think that you're bound to build a house the exact shape as that. I mean, you may, in the course of building, say, you know what, we don't want to put this jog here, we want a bay window, whatever the things that goes on when you're building a house. I didn't hear any testimony tonight that would require you to architecturally maintain the same house. I think you need to build a conforming house. There are times when someone comes in and they want a subdivision for an undersized lot, and they say, but we're putting up this nice little Stuart cottage, and they show you that, and you say, okay, and they want the benefit of making an aesthetic improvement, right? So they want that purpose of zoning, aesthetically pleasing, whatever it is, architecturally pleasing, historically beneficial, all those things. And there's times when we say, okay, that's the house you're building, that you have to build that house, because you've convinced us that part of what we're getting is a nice, pretty little cottage instead of a monster. Then they have to build that house. I didn't hear that kind of testimony. I think they showed you that house as for informational purposes, but I think they can build a conforming house on this lot, and that's okay?
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't impede on this easement, and they have a certain amount of, and that's the only thing that concerns me, is that,
I think the only condition is that there's a shared driveway easement, so that there's one point of egress on the Lafayette Street.
Yes.
That was their testimony.
And-
And that's something that I support.
And 4 parking spaces.
and nothing can overhang the easement. Okay, we've had that before, so you can't build a house that has an overhang that goes into the easement or anything, right?
There's no structure permitted vertically.
Right.
Encroaching into that.
Okay? So you know that. So, other than that, I think you're just building a conforming house, and if you need a variance, you have to come back and get one.
I just have one more question.
Try to get one.
On C-101, you indicate that the stubs for water and sewer are there. Are you absolutely sure they're there?
Yes.
Because the county's going to pave that road, and no one can open the road for 5 years.
I've taken it one step further, and I've reached out to the gas company, and a stub is going to be installed,
And your electric there as well, right?
the
So
electric.
everything is at least at the curb line.
And if it wasn't mentioned earlier, we do have,
What's that?
I was going to mention that, because
Sorry.
we have a standard condition that because there's new services that are required to service the new dwelling, they're required to get city sewer and water department approval.
Right.
But knowing that Lafayette Street's being repaved, we want to advise them, it could be under moratorium, and you may not be able to open it, so you do your due diligence and get those services in as quickly as you can.
That was what I was
Right.
going for.
There's a blue and a green line on the curb.
Good.
Sometimes those lines and flags don't mean much. I can attest from personal experience.
Any other members of the board have any questions? Craig, you want to go through your comments?
Absolutely. So I'd like to summarize my review memorandum dated October 20th, 2023. We've heard a description of what the applicant's proposing. They're creating two lots. The rear lot, which is lot 8302, will contain the existing single-family dwelling. They're proposing to develop the front portion of the lot, which is going to be lot 83.03, with a new single-family dwelling. There is an I think it's a 12-foot wide, a 15-foot wide easement that supports a 12-foot wide driveway, as well as the utilities that service the back lot. So there'll be a necessary easement description that's going to be provided to the board for review and approval, as a condition of approval. Move into the completeness review. Item number 10, under general requirements for all applications, we've already talked about this. This is their requirement that they have to provide, excuse me, they have to provide decision and resolution from any past approvals. They provided that evidence to us that they've searched for that, and there was no ability to provide that, and I think Mr. King pulled up a deed, and it was done in the subdivision was done in 1988, I believe.
I'm going to go with 98. It was hard to read, but all the deeds are 98.
98?
It looked like 88 on their deed, but it was fuzzy, but
Okay.
it looks like properties are being deeded out in 1998 to different parties.
that would have put it in your records then.
Yeah, I checked all of my, I represented the board at that point, and I checked references to these subject lots, and I couldn't find anything in my record, so that's where I usually start.
And it just references a survey, not even a subdivision map, so
So-
it's,
I did review the tax maps, the lot configuration. Sometimes you can tell how lots were subdivided and kind of, if there needs to be a restriction or, most of the time if they're subdivided and they're in a weird configuration, there often is an easement across the property to provide access or utility easement to provide services. I didn't see any pattern of development that would make me think that there was something with that lot. So that's just my take on it. I'll move on to the C and D variance checklist. Items number 18, 26, 27 should all be conditions of approval. Under the details required for minor subdivision approval, the map details, so they ultimately have to give us the final plan in digital format. That's letter S under 445-18, and under 445-34, which is the final plat details, this is what we have to make sure that's on the plan prior to them being able to file that. Letters E, F, I, and J should all be conditions of approval. And we did recommend deeming it conditionally complete, providing the board waive those things at this time. With regards to our zoning review, so this project is located in the R2 district. It is also located in the historic district. There are two variances, and I agree with the applicant's testimony. The lot frontage for the rear lot, it doesn't have lot frontage. It doesn't front on Lafayette Street. So in that case, it's a variance from our code, section 525-15B1, table 1. So 60 foot is required, there's no frontage. Mr. Catney indicated that there's a planning variance that's required, and that in his testimony, essentially, the statute the municipal land use law statute says you can't issue a permit for the erection of a building unless it fronts on an improved street. So in this case, this board is allowed to grant that variance so long as they demonstrate that and the direct issuance of a permit subject to conditions that will provide adequate access for firefighting equipment, ambulances, and other emergency vehicles necessary for the protection of health, safety, and that will protect any future street layout. So in this case, we have the fire department review these plans, and they signed off on it, and there was no recommended conditions associated with that. So they do support that. I reviewed this application, and I don't have the ability to see their reviews until after I've already completed my review. Glass of water here. So in this case, I did recommend, being conservative, taking a conservative approach, I did recommend that that paver driveway be extended to the rear of the lot, just out of abundance of concern, just to make sure that firefighting equipment can get there, but are also understanding that they have, the firefighting equipment already can access that driveway if it needed to, because it's existing driveway. So that's the reason for that comment. So those are the two variances. I'm going to roll right into the general review comments. These are standard conditions. We asked for the signature blocks to be added onto the plans. Under item number 2, I kind of asked a question, just to make sure that if the applicant's retaining control of the site, we don't need them to provide a deed notice. And which is very standard when we see these sites the subdivisions that don't have development plans on them. Item 3, they have to comply with the first floor elevation requirements as well as Chapter 258 of the Flood Damage Protection Code. We've asked the applicant under item number 4 is to replace the older sidewalk that's located along the project frontage. We believe that's seen its useful life and needs to be replaced. Under item number 5, the applicant is required to comply with Ordinance 485/2022, which is our minimum stormwater management and grading requirements. Item number 6 is our stormwater review. They have provided a stormwater design and subsurface infiltration systems, and we did find that design acceptable. 7 is the condition that City Sewer and Water Department approval is required for the connections to the new dwelling, so they have to provide evidence of that. Under item number 8 is our standard condition that they have to furnish the required performance guarantee and inspection escrows. And item number 9 is tying the inspection escrow requirement to an acceptable certificate of occupancy inspection. Item number 10 is the requirement to provide one street tree along Lafayette Street. Item number 11 is to provide evidence of consulting with the city's environmental commission, and we did receive comments from them. And they approved with the following conditions, and this is dated 10/27/23. They say they applaud the use of primarily native plants with one suggestion to substitute bearberry, or barberry? That's how I
Bayberry.
Bearberry?
Bayberry.
It says bear. They actually give the Latin name, so we'll go with the Latin name, and I'm not going to pronounce that.
Gretchen's probably right.
Okay, yeah. For the juniper species that's listed, we also recommend reducing the total amount of lawn with additional native pollinator-friendly plants. Do you have any issues with complying with that? Okay, so we would ask that as a condition of approval, you're going to revise the landscaping plan consistent with the Environmental Commission's comments. Okay. Item number 12, this deals with the requirement to provide the landscaping vegetation plan. It kind of piggybacks on item number 11. Item number 13, Lafayette Avenue is a county right-of-way, so we need evidence of Cape May County Planning Department approval. Have you had that yet?
We have it. We have just a 2-comment letter from them with their routine final.
Okay, so it's conditional on
Conditional,
you
but-
meeting those, okay. Items number 14 and 15 somehow got rehashed in there, but they are actually comments 8 and 9 rehashed again, so we can cross those off. Item number 16 is you have to give us evidence of the tax assessor's approval of the proposed lot numbers before we file the plan.
Question.
Go ahead.
I'm just thinking, I mean, I'm not the assessor. She's going to have to put the stamp on this, but 10 years from now, which 83.02 are you referring to? The old one or the new one? No one would know.
The tax assessor will tell us what lot numbers he wants. If he doesn't like the ones we have, he'll give us,
I mean, I would think they'd bump them up one. I mean, like, you would create 83.03 and 83.04, I would think, but let her decide that.
we're
I mean,
happy.
it's a matter of history. You got to understand, if somebody wants the assessment of block 83.02 in 2022, what are you going to get? You're not sure which one you're going to get, okay? It's just, she'll decide that. I don't want to get in the middle of that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I got it, yep.
Okay, item number 17, the minor subdivision plan will be revised for compliance with the Title Recordation Act upon approval by the board. 18 is the requirement to either set the monuments or provide that escrow in accordance with the statute. Item number 19 is comply with the requirements Shade Tree Commission, Environmental Commission, Fire Department, and Public Works Department. We already talked about the Environmental Commission. The Fire Department recommended approval with no conditions. The Police Department recommended approval with no conditions. And Public Works Department recommended approval with no conditions. The Shade Tree Commission recommended approval with the following conditions, and I'll read those. Property is tree-lined on both north and south property lines. The trees on the north property line should not be impacted by the proposed plans. The trees on the south property line are all healthy, mature specimens, and therefore they should be protected. The proposed structure will be well within the roots of these trees and will be impacted severely during construction. Protection of these trees should be considered and discussed with the property owner and construction contractor before starting any excavations or pile installation. Are these acceptable, that you will protect those trees?
To the extent possible, yes.
Okay. So your landscaping and vegetation plan should show those protection of those trees. Item number 20, approval is conditioned on all of the state, county, local approvals. Item number 21, comply with any and all applicable affordable housing requirements. Item number 22, after the board grants approval, you have to submit the requisite number of compliance plans that meet the conditions that the board sets to the board engineer for review. And I did miss one. There is a easement description that's required for the subject lots. That should be provided to the board engineer as well as the board attorney for review and approval. And that's a summary of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
Yeah, I have a few questions. The easement was one of the questions, so that's fine. On the Shade Tree Commission report, are they talking about trees in this property or trees on the property next to it?
I believe they're the trees to the, make sure I'm going the right direction here. I think it's the
West.
south or west. There's trees shown on the plan, sheet C101, that run along the property line, and that building is approximately 5 feet away from that property line. It's actually a little further. They measured to the eaves.
Before we
But
change
the ordinance is a little more forgiving now.
So are they raising the issue that we don't want to impact healthy trees on the next property over?
You want to try not to cut the roots to damage the tree or kill the tree.
So the adjacent property owner should be involved in that discussion as well, because they're his trees.
But if the roots are on your property, they're on your property.
Yeah,
That's just like a branch overhang.
Right.
You don't have to,
I
you
get
don't
that.
have to.
So, I mean, that happened to me. Actually, they tore down trees that were on my property, but on the property line, and they never told me they were gonna do that. So I'm just, that issue could be a problem going forward with the next door neighbor.
Well, we are going to revise the plan to show, to the extent possible, tree protection with a note to the contractor and site contractor, and certainly the owners are aware of it. They need to do everything they can to minimize that disturbance.
What I will say is, if you look at the what is this?
C101.
C101, if you look at the retaining wall that we built for the lot, you can see that it curves around a large tree.
Right.
Our intent there, and that tree is also on our neighbor's property.
Right.
We did that specifically to make sure we didn't disturb that tree. That's just our attitude. We would do everything possible to.
But the Shade Tree Commission is raising the problem with a new building cutting
Right.
around, but in somebody else's roots.
I think he's
Well,
really
that's-
concerned about the retaining wall more than the building.
No, but to be clear, to the extent that the foundation has to go there, it's gonna go there, but
Right.
we'll do what we.
Try to
You know, yeah, I mean, to not go in and tear out more than you have to is
He'll
all
be
you
a
can
good
do.
neighbor.
That's it, just be a good neighbor.
And on number 13, you mentioned there were two things in the county report. What were those two things?
Road opening permit and posting the bond, from my memory.
Road opening permit?
And posting the
Posting the
bond.
bond.
Those are the two things that,
Well, we're not going to need the road opening permit, right? Because you have the stubs already there.
Probably not.
Probably not,
Probably not. If not, we'll work it out with the county.
after they pave the road.
They may need it because I'm requesting that they replace the sidewalk, and it's their sidewalk.
Exactly.
Okay, that brings me to my next point, with number 4, the sidewalk. At least on my end of Lafayette Street, the county is putting in new sidewalks all along the road, tearing out the old ones and putting in new ones. This, 4, should we hold that in abeyance until we find out when the county is going to put a new sidewalk on, so that these folks don't have to build a new sidewalk?
Yeah, that's for them to coordinate, but my standard condition is, and I've seen enough construction to know that these contractors drive over the curbs and sidewalks and break them up during construction. So
Right.
I have to habitually go behind them and I just did an inspection today where the sidewalk was all busted up from contractors backing their trucks over it. And now I have to say, you have to fix this before I can issue your CO recommendation.
Right.
So that's our standard condition.
And interestingly enough, the county's got the sidewalks in already in most of Lafayette Street. So those are going to be imperiled,
Yeah.
but the county would have to fix them.
No.
At the end of the day, we would hope that there's new sidewalk provided along the full frontage of this property.
But when this
Whether
house
they,
was being
whether the
built,
county provides it or whether this applicant provides it is left in question.
Oh, I'm trying to save the applicant some money here, I guess.
No, they're going through, they had to submit an application to them too, so they're in dialogue with them, so they can ask that question.
Okay, well, all right. You understand the issue?
Yeah. At the end of the day, I don't care who put it in, I just make sure it's there.
Well, that's true, but at the end of the day, they care whether the county wrecked their brand-new sidewalk or, and they have to build a new one, that, they care about that.
well, when they build a house on there, they may wreck the sidewalk too.
They made what?
They may wreck the sidewalk when they build the house.
Well, that's on them. I just don't want the free sidewalks to the county to be wrecked and then have to pay.
Yeah, that's on your contractor. It's never the applicant or the owner, it's always their contractors that do it, and it's like, oops.
Oh, in about a week, they'll have a brand-new sidewalk over there, whether they want it or not.
6 weeks.
I got mine in already.
Anything else, Dennis?
No, that's it. Wait. No, that's it.
I raised one issue with Rich, which is on this, on the description, it spells out that it's a 1,933 square foot of Harrow living area. I didn't think we were pigeonholing them into that,
I deleted that.
okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
I understand the intent here, and we have significant, plans. If it changes significantly, they're gonna need a new revised drainage design and stuff like that, so, it's in their best interest, because I've already reviewed all of it, it's in their best interest to do something similar to this. If it's not a major modification, I won't have it take any issue with it. But if it's substantially different, and there's substantially, affects or impacts where you're proposing stormwater or your retaining walls or anything like that, it changes the grading and draining, we're gonna require new plans.
Okay. Anybody, any other board member? If not, we'll open it up to the public. Anybody in the public wish to comment? Yes, Terry? If you would, yes. Could you give her your microphone, John? She has one, okay.
Terry Swain and also Swain's Property Management, neighbors on the north and the south side, 1207 and 1207.5, and 1211 and 1211.5 Lafayette Street.
Ma'am, can you please raise your right hand?
Sure.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and the truth, so help you God?
Yes. I can help you out a little bit with the history on 1207 and some of the subdivision. I personally was not involved in that one. When I purchased that property, I purchased it from Burdett Tomlin Memorial Hospital. I believe they were involved with the subdivision that occurred then, that latest one in 1998. The person that originated the subdivision for them, that created their lot, that's the applicant's submission in front of you today, would have been the owner of the Dahl Hospital, and I believe her name was Blanche Pratley or something like that. In the records that I've seen in that subdivision, again, I wasn't a part of it, the intent that I saw that was written was that Blanche was creating the subdivision for the prior owner, Mr. Rogers, Phil Rogers, who sold them their lot. And I did not see any restrictions on there in terms of for him for development. So that is my record from as I know it. If I can find that paper and documentation, I'll supply it to Karen, and she can supply it to the city so they have that on record. But what I'm primarily here for tonight is our subdivision at 1211 and 1211 and a half. I only have 10 copies, but I'll hand them out and you guys can look at it. This is one of the subdivisions that they referred to earlier to the north of this property. And this was done, I was a part of this with Stephen Martinelli and with my lawyers. And so basically what was decided and filed with the county in 2010 was the initial 1211 Lafayette Street was a 75-foot lot that also extends back to the end of the property to the creek. We looked to get an easement and were denied and said that we needed to make it the flag with the 15 feet going to the left side. So the existing driveway that we currently have on the new 1211 and a half, new, and it's 13 years now, but that is solely for the intent of use at 1211 and a half, 1211. 1211 and a half doesn't have any access from that driveway. There's a garage that it ends up to, and we're completing our renovations on our primary residence at 1211. So there is no way to get to the subdivided back property from there. So the only access point that we have to get back there and to trim. We are also the owners of all the trees that were previously discussed. They're very large trees and old trees, so we have to have a landscaping service to do that. My husband's not capable of doing that. We right now cannot access our trees for cutting. We try to do that twice a year because of the neighbors have a building there, and it is very close on our side, and we tried to maintain that. We love what they're doing. They are great to our trees. They're great to nature, and we don't have any objections with the subdivision. The only problem that exists is we are getting ready to pour. The county engineer last week told me that there were 6 weeks to when they're scheduled, the contractors to be in front of 1211 and a half to rip up the existing concrete and pour. And so now what we'll do is we'll remove some of the original fencing that was before the subdivision. We like to leave things up until we get through the approval process so we can show what was original and what was there. So we're at that point now where we can address that driveway, and we want to pour the driveway apron so that we're in alignment with the county project, so that we're not going back and redoing that. So we're trying to go in and pour. Our mason has set it up. He's also reached out to the county engineer to complete that work next week. Weather permitting, if not the following week. Here is,
Okay, the first document I marked as 01.
this is the frontage of 1211 and a half Lafayette Street with our existing fence that we had when it was just 1211 Lafayette Street. So right now, we are landlocked and we can't access, and we can pour, but we can't get a truck to go back to the back of our property to tend to the mature trees because there's the new service that was put on the property at 1209. This pole represents the pole that goes to their underground wires. So for us, we're in a position where that has to be moved off of the frontage of 1211 and a half Lafayette Street. In the past few weeks, I've been on the phone talking with Atlantic City Electric, with the county engineer, exchanging emails, and with other various professionals in terms of how do we approach this, how do we do this, so that we're not duplicating the county's work. And that we're all on the same page, and that we can get back to servicing our property and accessing it. Right now, there's options on the table and there's plans out there, but nothing is.
Swain, are you asking anything specific of this applicant to adjust their project? Could you direct your?
Sure. So I'm just giving the history of this because this is their service line. I've been told by the electric company that they could move it, but they could only move it 2 feet and would have to go back towards their property because it wouldn't clear my driveway. Because I have the 12 feet, so they can't go 12 feet more on my side, they have to go more to their side. So the reason why I'm discussing this is that if there's change in that roadway, that is now going to be an easement that you're granting, before that gets locked in, I don't know what this impact of this pole might do to that roadway if this comes over closer to their roadway.
Sarah, you've never put a curb cut in alongside your house to go to the back then? You got the subdivision, but you never physically.
Right, right, yeah, because we haven't been there. We've been living at Jackson Street.
Right.
So the work that we've been doing is just of recent, and that's at 1211 and a half. So we're moving over to that point now where we can do that. We, now that things have been done at 1211 and a half, we don't have that access point. We were using it even though it wasn't required to stay open.
Ms. Swain, can we ask their engineer if he understands what you're concerned about? And if
Sure.
it impacts this at all? Do you know what that nice lady's
Did you
talking
see
about?
the picture?
I've seen the picture, and while I don't really understand what she's asking now, I do understand that the utility pole in its current location interferes with her intended driveway location. I get that.
And if it moves 2 feet, does it interfere with your easement driveway?
We've got, to the edge of our driveway, we've got about 2 feet, that's about it, before they're into our existing driveway, which we're continuing to maintain.
They're not proposing a new driveway. They're utilizing the existing curb. Right. So long as they move the pole, they can move the pole so long as it doesn't interfere with their existing driveway.
Who would
We
move the
would-
pole?
Well, if the I'm sorry, who would move
the
it?
pole?
If the electric company relocates the pole, whether it's the existing driveway that serves one lot or the existing driveway that serves two lot, we wouldn't anticipate them placing that pole into the existing driveway. So we understand it's an impediment to Ms. Swain's property. I've spoken with her about this issue. I know that there is an effort to try to get that relocated so it does not impair her ability to get in and out of her lot, but I don't think it's, well, I'll let John speak to it. I don't think it's going to impact us.
There might be a pole between two driveways.
It might be, yeah, John, you can speak to this. It's about
Probably
2
not the
feet,
first
it's about 2 feet away from the extended property line right now, correct?
About 1.5 feet from the center property line, the pole is 1.5 feet towards Ms. Swain's property, from our property line extended. And it's about 2 feet away from the edge of our existing apron. So
Doesn't sound like an issue we can do anything about.
no, the electric company is going to put a pole where the electric company wants to put a pole. And it's not going to be in an existing driveway, or if they're aware of a new driveway, it won't be there either. So where it ends up going, I don't know. If it's too far between existing poles, they can't go further northward to get on the other side of Ms. Swain's utility pole, they may be putting two in, one in front of her property and one in front of our property. But it's not a whole lot that,
Terry, how wide is your drive? Is it 15 feet? Your drive?
That's the access point to get to the back.
But there's no curb cut there now.
No.
It's not, this condition is not controlled by the applicant. That pole is located in a public right of way that's controlled by the county. So you can't ask this applicant to do anything about it.
I'm just saying, I had approved subdivision and it landed there. So when they move it, I have no control where it lands next. I don't know where it's going to land. So if it goes on to something that now has created more use, I don't know. I have no control over this. I'm trying as hard to work with everyone to come to a remedy, and we're not there.
And I understand Mr. Betcher reached out to the electric company today.
I spoke to somebody from the new construction office.
Can you go near your mic?
Yeah, I can't even hear.
I spoke to a woman from the new construction office, Atlantic City Electric, today. She was going to go back to their engineers, who apparently worked with Cape May's engineers or the county engineers, I'm not sure who they worked with, and review it. I don't know that we're going to get much more out of them. They're going to be pretty hesitant to want to move their pole. Somebody put a pole where there's an apron on paper.
Or, you know, there's not even an apron on paper, there's the flagpole portion of the lot.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Okay.
for purposes of our hearing, the notes are going to, your public comment's going to reflect that you expressed concern regarding the ultimate location of an electric pole that interferes with your proposed driveway next door. That's going to be the summary of it. We can't, I mean, my legal opinion is we can't do anything about that right now, but it sounds like a legitimate concern, and I'm sure they
which might have
feel for you. I mean,
her driveway.
nobody wants a pole in their driveway, I'm sure.
Did you try to contact the county engineer, Terry?
I've talked to everybody.
Pardon me?
I've talked to everybody. I've talked to Robert Church. I've talked to very high up in Atlantic City Electric, and I'm not quite, they said this happens. Oh, well. So I'm not sure why I asked them, don't they have part of their procedures to check? We have to go through a process to get an approval for a subdivision, so it's on file with the county. Wouldn't they check those records before they place a utility pole? There's nothing in my restrictions saying I had to have a driveway there.
If you're proposing a new driveway, it's been my experience that they ask you to file an application to have that pole relocated, and you bear the costs of that. It's not fun, and it's not cheap.
And also, question two, you're putting in the driveway. Is the county,
That's the only access to the back lot.
right, now,
Yes.
is the county aware, because they're making curb lines as we speak?
Correct. I spoke with Robert Church about that as well to find out when we pour the apron next week, are we pouring to the 5-foot easement that they've taken back for the road widening project?
So you're going to have,
And he said, no, we're not doing that. We're just putting right back where we are.
so you're going
So
to,
when you have your apron there, we'll do the curb with the apron.
they're going to put a curb, a full.
Right, so there'll still just be a pole there that we won't be able to use the driveway. So I'm landlocked.
Mr. Loppett, is there any way you can move your driveway away from the pole?
I can't because I have trees. I have trees on both sides of the driveway,
Moving a tree is going to be cheaper than moving that pole.
mature trees.
That's
that-
my opinion.
Yeah, well,
It's what?
Moving the tree is going to be cheaper than moving that pole.
so I'm not sure why this ends up being my responsibility. It's not my service line. And so I'm just being honest. I'm trying to call these people, I'm trying to work with everyone sitting at the table and other people that aren't even here tonight. And I come here with an open heart to say, what can I do to get to the back of my property? Because if I don't cut my trees, that also affects their building back there.
Would you like an easement to use my driveway to cut your trees?
No, because the trucks can't go over your wall, because then they would hurt or do damage to their trucks. So this really is the only way to access the back of the property. So if you approve this subdivision, I'm just saying without a pending the resolution of the placement of the pole, wherever that might fall out, then it further landlocks me because you've just agreed to that this is a problem that has to just be resolved by me and not by a shared area. I'm trying to create harmony in the community. I want to go back and live there. I want to be with my neighbors, but I'm just trying to come
Yeah.
to a resolution where we're all not having to change the use of our properties that have been approved.
They approved that driveway location. Was the pole located there when you proposed that, or was this a new pole location? They'd say they just
Pole
plopped
went
it?
in when they got their service.
Yeah, so.
Right, so in '21.
So they.
So when I did the subdivision, that was 2010.
Yeah, so within that right-of-way, they plop their poles wherever they want. And I deal with this all the time because I do a lot of road jobs for municipalities, and we have to ask them to move those. They're guests in towns' right-of-ways, so when it's like, when we're doing a road job for that municipality, they will move their poles at their cost. If it's a private landowner and they're asking to move a pole to facilitate a new driveway that's being put in, that homeowner bears that price and has to file the application to relocate that pole.
So as we previously
The cheap ones are like 20 grand, depends on how much stuff, depends on how much stuff is on the pole, but I've had experience, there's 20 grand to move a pole and there's 100 grand to move a pole.
So again, going back to that issue is like what Dennis said, like I'm looking at the picture here of everybody working and not doing things more than once. And I've already witnessed this when we worked on the Lafayette Street project down by the hardware store earlier this year. And when we all work together and we come to a common good, like when something is out of place, we fix it and we move forward, right? So all I'm saying is I'm just looking for some discussion where we can come to a common place on this issue because the county's about to open up that sidewalk and that curbing, and this is an opportunity for us to, hey, say, look, here we are. Can we?
Terry, in the perfect world, where would that pole go?
Away.
Where would the poles be located in a perfect
So
world?
one of the options that the gentleman from Atlantic City Electric said to me, I said, what other options can you give us so that we can try, I'm trying to extend all possibilities here. And he said, well, we could go back onto the property. We could go in the back where it's not at the front, which I think for both, for Mitch and Gay and for myself and for the future people living there, Joan, and I think that would actually even be better if it went back there, but I don't know what that involves. I don't know what the cost, benefits, and expenses are and what weighs out the other. But with it moved back, it would be less of an obstruction for anybody getting in and out of a side-by-side driveway with a pole right there in the middle, because you're still going to have to clear. And it's they're not going to widen the road on this project, so it's a tight street to make that turn out.
Is there any way to widen your curb cut and angle it a little bit towards both Lobster House side? With an easement? I don't know, I'm just trying to,
That's what I said 20 minutes ago.
oh, did you? I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault. I'm just saying that you might be able to slide it over to the front lot and get a little easement for a few feet of that and kind of shift everything just a couple of feet around the pole.
So when I lost the 15 feet, I lost a lot of property. So I only have, because of trees as well, I have this really big tree. And I had to build my addition around the tree because I wasn't allowed to take it
I
down.
don't know all the details of your property.
But I'm just saying, I only have between set,
Easier to move the
right.
driveway than to move the telephone pole.
So there's an easement of 5 feet off of that because it's of the property line, because that's the back property, right? So I have 5 feet off the driveway, and then that leaves me like 12 feet between that and like the house. And then as it is, when they do widen, I'll be stepping onto the sidewalk because it'll be up to our steps. So all I'm saying is when we do our refencing, this is why I'm addressing this all now, like I started a few weeks ago, because I have to get those guys in and measure and stuff. I'm going to put my fence where it should be when they do take the 5 feet. So I'm going to be set back there, but the driveway, I can't do that. Because the sidewalk is still going to be where it is, because Mr. Church confirmed that to me.
We're just trying to offer some suggestions, Terry.
Yeah, no, I understand. I've kind of been
I'm sure you
battling this for a while.
labored over this in your head for a while. But the fact of the matter is, what these folks are doing doesn't impact whether they like.
But if the pole moves over, if it goes to the back or wherever it goes, it might impact that road that he currently has, is all I'm saying. I don't know where it's going.
Well,
But doesn't that road exist today?
His driveway?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It is very unlikely that they move that pole to conflict with an existing driveway. So, and that would be between the owner, if they suddenly move that pole into this owner's property in conflict with their driveway, then they're going to take issue.
So
But-
when we go through a process to get subdivided and we don't develop it at that time, there's no recourse. It's just,
You didn't file an application with the utility company at that point.
no, because I
The
felt I
utility
didn't have,
company-
I'm not the service person, so I felt it should be filled out by the person whose service it
The
is.
utility company doesn't follow our land use approvals. Some of them are built, some are not. That's why they look at the existing driveways and they say, okay, we're going to plop a pole here. There's no driveway in front of it.
Yeah, and to help explain how it may have happened, the pole is equidistant between a fence on Miss Williams' property and her driveway.
Yeah.
To a person driving a truck for Atlantic Electric, without a survey, he's going to see a fence, think property line, driveway. If we put it right here, I'm not going to affect anyone.
Yep.
Unfortunately, he had no way of knowing that there was a subdivision.
Right. They
that
don't-
had a future driveway intended right there.
They don't track land use approvals. So the only time they're aware that you're putting a driveway in is when you actually make an application. Like if I do this, I sit on the other side of the table and I do this for other, private developers. We always try and steer the driveways well away from utility poles because they're super expensive to move. In this case, they plopped one that affected you, and now you're stuck. So my advice is somehow figure out how to rearrange your,
They have to move, they're going to move 2 feet. Just to go.
or you have to bite the bullet and have that pole moved. And you're going to be the one that is responsible for it and the financial hardship that is.
She wants
So I know I'm not giving you any information that you want to hear, but
driveways.
So I appreciate your feedback on that, but again, I'm just going to put it on the table. My recommendation of coming here tonight was to put it out there as being a condition to be put onto this application so that there could be time allowed to let this process happen and to see where the pole lies so that it doesn't impact any other changes for all people involved, because finances are tight for everybody. And so I don't feel it's necessary to engage in things and then have to go back and redo them just for the sake of we can place things wherever we want to place things. So I'm just saying I would like to put that on the table for the planning board to consider if they would put this on as a condition so that at least I can try to do this by myself and try to get other parties involved to get there to be placement of this so that we aren't landlocked from accessing our property. Because any changes to our driveway then changes other properties. And so
I can't see any condition we can put on this application that would help this next person. I mean, this application has nothing to do with her concern. Her concern is legitimate and upsetting and important, but it's not anything to do with this particular application. We have an existing driveway, so it's not like we're putting in a new driveway, we could put it somewhere else to help her. It's an existing driveway. So there's nothing we can do in this application, in my opinion, legally, that would help you as much as I can tell everybody's pain to help you. But this isn't the forum where we can help you. We just have to look at the merits of this application with an existing driveway. So I'm sure they want to help.
The board doesn't control the right-of-way where that pole's located or will be relocated. So can't put a condition on it.
Terry, if you give me a call this week, you have my number, I can maybe talk to you about the county aspect of it. Lennox City Electric, I'm not going to have any, I can certainly give a good smile and influence as much as I can, but with the county in regards to the curb cut, maybe that's something that could be discussed if we're quick.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Keating, do you have 01 and 02? All right, let me make sure you have 02.
There's a picture of the pole.
You have it. You have to read it. Where'd you get that? It's a shame.
Google Maps.
Yes.
That's the pole.
The pole is going to be moving right to there. It's going to be moving this way, 2 feet. And this is the driveway. I don't know that it's the property that we're talking about.
That would be exactly like my driveway.
Yes, but don't, you're not going to do a
Well,
closing.
the
on
point
it.
is,
Just
the
vote.
point is,
You don't want me to do a closing?
All right.
in the middle.
So the motion, folks, the motion that I,
I don't know. That's what she's.
oh, did you, that's the public, did you close?
Oh, yeah, anybody else in the public portion closed?
Okay, so the motion that I'd recommend being made, although how you vote is up to you, is a motion to grant the subdivision, the minor subdivision, as well as variances 1 and 2 on page 4 of the engineer's report, subject to the conditions outlined in our conversations tonight, including those listed 1 through 22 in the engineer's report, but with number 23 being that the easement agreement must be submitted to the board engineer and the board attorney for approval, as well as we removed a condition about they're not going to build exactly, they may not build exactly what's on that plan, but they have to build it in a way that complies with the bulk standards unless they get an additional variance, and nothing they build can interfere with the easement area that's being provided on the plan. And that's the motion I recommend being made.
Did we satisfy general review comment number 2 regarding potential sale, transfer of the property limitations? Does that come out as well?
Yeah, I did not recommend that because you're retaining control.
Yeah, my engineer has removed that, and I'm going to let them, although I guess they didn't commit not to sell it. They just said they plan on developing it themselves and selling it to giving it to their friends. But if their friends decide not to buy it, they may sell the subdivision. So the reason I'm not too worried about it here is there aren't that many conditions. Like, it's not one of those really weird ones. So it's not so much, the reason I'm coming with it isn't so much the promise, because unless it's in writing, to me, it doesn't mean anything. But I don't see any real big conditions that would need a lot of warning for another buyer. It's an easement. I mean, it's on the plan.
The timing mechanism is, we're either going to require it or we're not going to require it.
The deed notice?
Yeah, because,
Which item are we talking about?
because it has to be, it gets filed when you create the property.
I know, I'm just saying that, yeah. The deed notice would simply be that this is, it would just say that that it's subject to the, I thought when we did this before, we just said it's subject to the conditions outlined in the resolution number and put in the number. That's all that we did.
And if I can offer this, there were a couple conditions such as that the easement will not be blocked, will be kept open. We can make those notes on the subdivision plan, so now they're part of the record.
Can you put the note for number 2 on the subdivision plans?
The full note?
Yeah.
But I think that's going to go
Here's
away
what,
when
here's
we
what I
build the house.
suggest, is I've done this before, it solves all the problems. The subdivision plan should note that it's been approved subject to the resolution number that we passed. So on the map, on the file map, it should say, this is subject to the conditions set forth in resolution number, and you'll have the number by then, and that fixes everything. That way, it's in there, okay? Craig, is that okay with you?
It's a fair compromise.
All right, there you go. Okay?
Would you mind saying that note again, Rich, just so I get it right?
Yes. The subdivision map that you file will reference the resolution, and that it's subject to the conditions in that resolution. Okay? All right, there you go.
So, did anybody make that motion? Somebody here to make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
To approve what Rich said?
Prove as, what he said.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gorgon, seconded by Mr. Jones. Mr. Gorgon?
Yes.
Mayor Mullick?
Yes.
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mr. Crowley?
Yes,
Mr. Lundholm?
Yes.
Mr. Paducis?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Becerra?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
luck,
you all
guys.
for your time.
Okay, good luck.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay, well, there's one more item on the agenda.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah, everybody received a copy of the bills to be paid
Yes.
to our professionals, but somebody care to make a motion to authorize payment?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to authorize payment of the bills.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Yeager, seconded by Mr. Lundholm. Mr. Gorgon?
Yes.
Mayor Mullick?
Yes.
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mr. Crowley?
yes.
Mr. Lundholm?
Yes.
Mr. Paducis?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Becerra?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so we have discussion on the master plan review of ordinance 524-2023, an ordinance prohibiting the use of artificial turf in the city of Cape May. You want to just give background on this? We not part of this?
I wasn't part of it. I think if there needs to be background, it'd be Craig.
What's that?
How we got to this point?
So my knowledge of this is that one of our board members at the zoning board level, there was a discussion with regards to an application that had synthetic turf in it. And there was a question posed to me whether our ordinance prohibited it or not. There's no mention specifically of the prohibition of synthetic turf anywhere in our ordinance. There's language that has been interpreted through the years that says, and I actually put that on, it's page 2 or 3 of my review, under section 52560I, 1, any part or portion of the site which is not used for buildings or other structures, loading or parking spaces and aisles, sidewalks, and designated storage areas shall be landscaped. Landscaping shall be integrated into the building arrangement, topography, parking, and buffering requirements. Landscape shall include trees, bushes, shrubs, ground cover, perennials, annuals, plants, sculpture, art, and the use of building and paving materials in an imaginative and aesthetic manner. But there's nowhere in our ordinance does it prohibit artificial turf. Now, we are starting to see applications that are trying to use this synthetic material as lawn or lawn areas or recreation areas on lots. And I believe that the governing body probably listened to the concerns of the zoning board member and have crafted this ordinance to directly prohibit that synthetic turf be used in the city of Cape May.
West Cape May also, I'm the attorney there, and they have a ordinance specifically prohibiting astroturf or whatever it's called now, synthetic turf. But they do have an exception for miniature golf courses, I think.
So I did a consistency review, and when I did that, I found, numerous, in your historic preservation element, there's recommendations with regards to streetscape. In your conservation element, there's environmental concerns that support the banning of this artificial turf. And there's also recommendations for landscaping, to use planting materials, et cetera. So it's consistent with the master plan language. Now, when I get to the zoning code, I noticed in the C2 and C5 districts, we allow as a permitted use miniature golf courses. And guess what miniature golf courses are comprised of? So my recommendation is, it is consistent, providing that you allow for a permitted use to be able to construct a miniature golf course. So there should be some type of allowance written into the ordinance that allows for the synthetic turf for permitted uses.
Okay.
And that's it.
My only comment is, we have these knee-jerk reactions sometimes to situations instead of kind of thinking them through. and to have this thrown out and not consider, I mean, there may be, I was doing some research on artificial turf. You can't, apparently, you can't tell the difference in some cases between that and regular grass. It's that improved. There's pros and cons to lawns and grass. I mean, for one thing, you're saving water if you're not watering the grass. We may have a water shortage in town. I just don't know, and there's so many areas where I've got trees in my yard, I can't grow grass under the trees, the sun doesn't get to them. So there may be some happy medium, or at least some provision where you could allow for a certain percentage or something that would allow somebody to use it somewhere on the property, because just to say flat out no, it just forecloses on any ingenuity at all. I mean, not that I'm a big fan of it, but I just,
But other people might be.
and, well, and the thing is, this turf is, it's total, 100% permeable. Water drains down right through it. It doesn't run off.
The application that we heard at the zoning board level showed infiltration qualities that were amazing. So, I mean, in that aspect, yes, there are good things about it. So I guess the questions you have to ask yourself is, you know, the historic nature of the city.
Or you
Is
maybe,
it- is it-
But that's an,
Yeah.
but that's an HPC, to me, would be an HPC issue.
Okay, so.
And not a banning of artificial turf.
And then, you know, you have a very large birding and butterfly community, you know, enthusiasts.
right.
The birds and butterflies know grass versus
Sure they
synthetic
do.
turf. So,
Can
you
you,
know, those
what
are-
are some of the examples that were presented to, I guess it was zoning board?
so
Put it in?
this is one that was really not a huge issue, but just someone asked, and I don't think the board took any issue with what was proposed, but it was essentially a pool patio that had granite tiles, and in between the granite tiles had strips, like 3-inch strips of this synthetic turf. So it wasn't a big deal
Yeah.
for them, but someone asked, can someone put this all over their lawn? So that's how this,
Right, so something
The
like
banning
what you're
of it.
suggesting would not be allowed at all if he just said no to it.
That's the easy one.
right, or without variance. I mean, you can, this is in the zoning code, you can go and get a variance from the zoning board if you wanted to do it on a site-by-site specific variance application.
Yeah, or you disallow it in the front yard, and maybe in the rear it might be, I mean, there's different, there's just a lot of nuances to it.
Yeah, I've seen, not in Cape May, but someone I know in Mullica Hill, they have a putting green in their backyard. It's, small area, but it's artificial turf for the putting green area. I kind of don't see that happening here, but as an example. And the other thing, just limiting it to miniature golf, for instance. There could be other recreational applications, I don't know, a batting cage or something like that, which I don't think exists right now, but like if we wanted to put a batting cage at Kiwanis Park in the future or something like that, you'd probably want to have artificial turf in a certain area, and this would prohibit that, wouldn't it?
Well, that's why I said permitted uses. There needs to be a provision. Right now, the ordinance is absence any provision
Okay.
for miniature golf courses or any other type of recreational use like that. So there probably needs to be language inserted in there, because you can't tell someone that you have a permitted use and you can construct it, and then you ban them from using the materials that are typical of that type of construction.
The turf that's in the new Kiwanis Child Park, what kind of turf is that?
It's not artificial turf, it's just rubber.
I guess technically it's not astroturf.
No, right. I mean, the one thing I'd just throw into this conversation, if you're talking about having the qualities are so different. I mean, it's literally like a carpet or something. I mean, some of the quality is awful. Some of the quality is really good. So I just,
You can't zone quality.
I know that's, but I'm saying, I think it would.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, that's
the
like.
difference
If
is
you're
huge.
justifying a variance, you can, the board can say, okay, this is, this area is appropriate for it, this type is appropriate for it, what your use is for, appropriate for it, so.
Does the HPC clearly ban it?
What's that?
Does the HPC definitely ban it?
I don't know, I didn't,
I mean,
I don't do, I don't
having
do a-
artificial turf going down a
I don't
historic
do a
street would
deep
be a
dive,
disaster.
like when I do master plan consistency reviews, I don't do a deep dive into their requirements. I'm only looking at the master plan. So there is a historic element in there. You know, they deal with streetscape. So appropriate historic streetscape. It is recommended the individual property owners, businesses be required to retain a historic character, a historic streetscape by obtaining period-appropriate lights, benches, and similar items, and prohibiting inappropriate lighted signage.
That has nothing to do with,
It's the only, you know, they're
So
saying,
Bill, if it prohibited in front yards and in historic district, is that something that,
I would think that they would find that not an appropriate material in a front yard in a
no,
historic.
I would agree 100% with that.
Yeah,
Yes.
so,
But they did, the house that got around the pool, one of them is on North Street, which is,
but they only,
historic house.
but they only control the historic district.
Right.
And historic property, so, you know,
Hey,
if,
the cat's out of the bag on this, because people are going to either say Cape May doesn't like the look of artificial turf, so they're going to ban it, or people are going to say Cape May decided to allow it, which basically means it's open season for that. In effect, what might happen with this discussion and the discussion at the council and in the public is that Cape May doesn't have a problem with plastic lawns, which becomes a public relations problem for Cape May.
well, it's a public relations problem if you say it's a plastic lawn. But if you look at some of the, and I'm not advocating for it, but if, I've seen pictures and I've seen
Yeah.
videos of it, you
But-
can't tell the difference.
But
between that
somebody
and
who wants to,
grass.
but somebody who wants to rip Cape May for being non-Victorian is gonna use the word plastic. It's gonna be a flashpoint issue. Cape May is either gonna let people have plastic lawns, or they're not gonna let them have plastic lawns.
Well, again, that's a nomenclature thing.
But that's public dialogue.
And you've got a big part of town that's not in the historic district.
Yeah, right. So
And
does
I-
Cape May wanna be the town?
There's got to be a happy medium between
Yeah.
is prohibited in any form and having like a reasonable amount to put around your pool or, there's got to be someplace you can agree on that.
For decorative use as opposed to, I don't know what the other term would be, like a practical use, like
Well, then-
a section of a lawn.
those terms are subjective, and
Yeah.
how do we, like, you know, at the end of the day, I have to enforce this stuff. Hey, it's decorative.
Several new houses on Indiana Avenue, just say one's being built now. Could they put artificial turf in the front yard? Right now, without,
how do you deal with that on coverage?
That's another issue.
Yeah,
It drains.
it drains.
I don't know. Our ordinance is silent to it. So over the years, and I can tell you, because I've had this discussion with past zoning officers as well as the current zoning officer, we think it's banned under the landscaping provisions in the ordinance. We're really reading into it. There's nothing specifically banning it.
Seems to me you should regulate it, not ban it, but at least not. I mean,
Yeah.
It's a great point, Mr. Crowley. Once the cat's out of it, now you gotta regulate it in some way. It's meaningful.
Yeah.
How did somebody like want to do their whole yard on Jackson Street or like is this just somebody said, oh my God, we can't have that?
Happened to come up-
Who's got a yard on Jackson Street?
Well,
You know, just in my own
that's why,
opinion,
because it's so small.
you don't even allow people to use hardy board. I mean, we have to use real wood in the historic district on our homes.
Yeah.
Are you opening up a Pandora's box here by allowing artificial turf to be used? So then somebody comes back, well, I want to use artificial wood on my home now. I don't want to use artificial this on my home. Then what happens to the area?
There's a difference between the historic district and other areas of town that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's contesting the historic district part. I don't think anybody's contesting the historic district part of it, but
Maybe a ban it in the historic.
I mean, I could see it around a pool, a hotel pool area, using artificial turf where it would work. Maybe it has to be a case-by-case.
Yeah, but it can't be subjective, Gary. You've got to have some concrete
Can I ask about, obviously, maybe it's not that obvious, but our understanding is it does have 100% percolation of water, but maybe we don't look at it that way. I'm just bringing this up as maybe we look at it like landscaping and other hardscaping, like of 50%. I don't know if that's even within our
As
purview.
coverage? I mean,
As coverage,
good.
yeah. I mean, what we're talking about, putting it around pools, I mean, obviously, that may be in replacement of stone or something else on it.
Or grass.
Or grass,
Or
yeah.
pavers, concrete pavers.
I mean, if the idea is to limit it,
Yeah, limit your lot coverage with it.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
know.
not advocating one way or the other. I'm just,
Right.
I'm raising.
Either
I'm
am I, by the
raising
way.
questions. You guys, you guys have to get reelected all the time. So like, you guys get to make that's your power to zone. So like, ultimately, but this board can certainly make recommendations, and they're raising some good questions. Do we prohibit it, outside the historic districts? Or do we allow it at a certain percentage?
Have you seen, with the exception of Westgate, maybe you seen other municipalities that have some sort of ordinances on this? sort of
Rich mentioned to me that Westgate May banned it.
thing? Right, but outside
Totally.
of Westgate May, anywhere else?
They have exceptions for like.
I read an article in the paper last week of, it's not around here, but it's out in Denver. Some community did that as well, suburban Denver. And the
Yeah,
article seemed to indicate that.
So
it's a growing issue.
your criticism is, you're a bird and butterfly migration route. That stuff is certainly not conducive
No, it's
to,
not.
to facilitating that. Do you want that look in your town? This stuff, if you allow it in certain percentages, are you going to limit it into rear yards where it's not visible from the street? Are you going to allow it in the front yards?
No, I don't think you want that at all.
So these are questions that I'm posing as like,
Here's Westgate May. The installation of artificial turf in any form is prohibited in all borough zoning districts. Any installations of artificial turf existing at the time of the adoption, never mind.
That's the language in the resolution
Okay, it's the same?
it's saying, he took it from Westgate May.
Oh, you took exactly from Westgate May.
I didn't write it.
Somebody
Came from-
somebody
from,
did.
city
I was not asked to have any input on this.
Well, yeah, but section B says, that's why I didn't think it was from that, because
Yeah,
section
that's
B
right.
says, using this section, artificial turf means any of the various synthetic carpet-like materials made to resemble turf or grass and used as a substitute for grass or other natural substances as a lawn, surface covering, a playing surface for athletic events, or other similar applications.
So they don't even allow it for miniature golf courses or anything else.
Nope.
I mean, that's,
Well, the cat's out of the bag, guys.
That's extreme.
When this came up at council, what was the rationale to send it to the planning board, rather than trying to act on it at that time? I think that's
This same
important.
question, I think one of the questions even right away was kind of like, what about miniature golf courses, I mean, because like, we ban it, how are they replacing their artificial turf?
Yeah.
So, but I think exactly this conversation, if we're not going to ban it, what's the restrictions and how does it work?
that's why I'm asking
So-
if there's any other municipalities that have, that we know of.
So if it were banned for residential use, as opposed to, and I don't know what you would call it, but I'll call it recreational use, which would be, and I'll throw in batting cages, golf, miniature golf, maybe even if a putting green were to be built in the future here or something like that, those kinds of things. But they would be done in a specific zone and not in a residential zone. So there's a differentiation there.
In residential zones?
Ban it in residential.
Well, what we know so far is that we have no regulations governing this, and it's not, even though people are being told they can't have it, they actually have every right to have it, based on the reading of our.
Here's an article, New Jersey, turf wars, why New Jersey towns are divided over fake grass. February 2022. So maybe
There's
table it and
arguments
look
on
at
both
some more.
sides. I did a little bit of research, I mean,
I know some schools have banned it, like
you've
on the
got-
athletic fields, when there was more of an injury issue.
You've got,
But-
for artificial,
And maintenance.
there's limited watering, so you don't really, you're saving water if you have artificial. But they're plastic, they're hard to recycle, and they're not biodegradable. And they also retain heat, so if some people walking on them, their feet, they are 100% permeable. They do not engender insects, worms in the ecosystem.
Yeah, migratory issues, they got against it.
With grass, fertilizers and pesticides have run off.
No,
Use
yeah,
a lot
it's
of
terrible.
water. The clippings go in the storm sewer system and on the street. One lawnmower can use as much as 8 to 10 cars when it's cutting the grass. One gallon of gas produces more emissions, the same emissions as a 100-mile car trip. So there's just little nuances out there. The grass absorbs carbon monoxide, it filters pollution, supplies oxygen, and absorbs heat. I mean, so there's,
Can I make a suggestion?
sure.
Could we refer this to the Environmental Commission for their analysis
Well,
of whether or
let's-
not?
You know what they're going to say.
This is what happened. They introduced an ordinance, it's a land use ordinance. It's referred to us for master plan consistency.
Right.
We can say it's consistent, and we can say it's not consistent, and we send that recommendation back to council. They can approve it with or without a recommendation. We can also add on recommendations to say, maybe you should reconsider this because of this issue, that whatever, and maybe they do that. They don't have to listen to it. They can pass it, they can not reintroduce it. It's up to them. But this board, as the planning board, does a master plan consistency review, and they can also attach recommendations to it.
Well, all right, is it-
That's our job. So our recommendation can be, we should have the environmental commission's input on it.
Okay, in that context, is it consistent with the master plan?
I believe that this is consistent, provided that there's a provision in there to allow, you have permitted uses that include miniature golf courses. You can't have a permitted use and then not allow them to build it with the commonplace materials that miniature golf courses are built out of. That to me is inconsistent with the zone plan.
Yeah.
So that's why there's a recommendation in my report that says, in the C2 and C5, they allow miniature golf courses. There needs to be some type of provision that allows them to construct miniature golf courses with synthetic turf.
So our recommendation could include that, plus another sentence that said that the council ought to explore other similar arrangements where artificial turf is appropriate.
Yeah, you can make as many recommendations as you want.
Is that our responsibility?
No, it's our responsibility is to make recommendations to council.
Dennis, I like your idea.
What? Wait a minute, hold it.
Zach doesn't.
Let the record show, this is what, it's been 3 years now, Bill?
We agreed on something?
So this
And
is
by
a
the way, I
punt.
did-
We're punting.
I did want to make a comment that it's kind of ironic that 2 years ago, we were all about smoking grass, and now we're all about using it on our lawns. This is like a grass town or what?
All right. So are we, what are we doing?
Well, first of all, the resolution does not, it's not comprehensive. It doesn't say anything about miniature golf courses. All it does is just
No.
bans artificial turf, which is not, I think everybody agrees, that's not what we're looking to do. You gotta at least have to do miniature golf courses and commercial uses that have other
Other recreational.
accessory uses that might want to utilize this sort of thing.
Yeah,
you
right.
know.
That sounds like good language.
I think it would
I
be
mean,
more of a
what if a hotel
residential
wanted
thing,
to put
though.
like a bocce court or something like that?
I mean, I think, I won't say the name, but there is a hotel that has a veranda that has artificial turf.
Right.
Yeah, there's stuff out there. There's artificial turf out in your city, and I can tell you that.
So you really don't want to just squash everything.
So you think it should perhaps be regulated and not banned?
Right.
And that the board should look further into different regulations? as
Right,
opposed to
other
banning.
appropriate uses of this substance within the commercial zones.
And limit the lot coverage of it. 10%
Well,
or
just it
15% or
It doesn't
whatever.
count as lot coverage, that's the next question.
No, but I mean,
Permeable.
on a separate note, limit how much of it you can put down on your lot, so somebody doesn't do their whole yard.
But then again, for a miniature golf course, it's going to be 90%.
Yeah.
No, there's got, that should be separate and apart from
Yeah.
the provision that allows miniature golf courses to
Yeah.
do whatever they need to do.
But if you were to prohibit it I mean, residential is really where the concern is. You don't want it in the front yards, you don't want it in the historic
You don't
district.
want any historic district, any residential
But like,
structures.
in your backyard, if you fenced in an area of 10 by 10 with artificial turf for kids to play in, so they don't track grass in the pool, I don't think that's unreasonable.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, try and put that into a quantitative.
No, well.
More concern is what the mayor said, is the quality of the artificial turf. I mean, you go to Home Depot and buy it off a roll for like $3 a square foot. It's the quality of the artificial turf that's put down. That's important.
Let's go back to what Bill and I agree on.
Can't regulate.
Which I think is that Greg's recommendation will support that because it's consistent with the master plan.
Except for the. Go
Step
ahead.
one. Step two is that adding that section 2 recognizes that there are appropriate and limited uses for this substance within a commercial environment. So we want to
Bless you.
recommend furthermore that this language be sent to the council as a recommendation for their study. And we would include miniature golf course and other appropriate uses of that substance.
So you see, but then you have to start defining appropriate uses.
Yeah, well,
You can't leave it open-ended.
We're kicking that back to council.
Well, we would kick that back to the planning board by saying, all we would say is that, we don't want to completely wipe out the ability to use artificial turf, but we think anybody who wants to use it needs to have a landscape plan, and it has to get past the planning board.
Would you consider limiting it to residential properties only?
That they have to do it?
I mean, no, commercial only.
No, I'm sorry, that we would only allow commercial?
Right.
No, I don't think, I think that there are legitimate reasons why people could use it in their backyard, under a picnic table where you can't grow grass. I mean, we've given a number of examples of areas where
Can you agree
you
not in
could
front yard,
use
though?
it.
What about
Not
not
in
front
the
yard?
front yard, I agree.
So there you got something.
And I
not in the
think,
front yard.
yeah, I think that you could say, I would agree with not in the front yard. I think one of the worst things is when winter comes and everybody else's grass turns brown. There's Dennis's lawn's beautiful, green. Yeah. Well, I'm just saying that, I'm sorry, and I don't think we can easily legislate this without making every single application reviewable by a committee.
The ordinance.
I
saying-
think.
The ordinance saying prohibited should be regulated, and that's whatever we decide at that point.
Well, Mr. Chairman, can I just say one thing, too? Council's not under the gun to pass
No,
this.
they're not, I know that.
It's-
It's one person right now, but
There's-
it's.
Well, there's a point of the cat getting out of the bag, but look, we can't do everything. We want to do it right. So I'm sure I can speak for at least myself and Mike that we're not looking to pass this at the next meeting or whenever it comes. I don't even remember when second reading is, but we want to have a good dialogue and good recommendation from the planning board. So if this is something we want to talk about at the next meeting after some thought and discussion, I think it's better than trying to do something tonight, unless you think we should.
Well, there are occasions when I'm in your position, when I had leadership positions in different organizations, I would create a committee. And I would say to the person who wanted it, I would say, listen, solicit 2 or 3 or, some people, get together, talk about it, come back to us with some ideas that doesn't ban it, but regulates it in a sensible way. And then those people do research, and then they come back and say, not front yards, has to be at least 3 inches long, it can't be, true astroturf. They may come back with good ideas that you can incorporate. So I always took the person who wanted to do it, say, make a committee of, get one person from the zoning board, one person from the planning board, go out and have lunch and come up with some stuff that makes sense, and that's what I used to do. But
And Rich, if you took that one step further, would it be a good idea to have a public hearing on this issue in front of the planning board?
It becomes a public hearing when you introduce it.
Yeah, you're going to have one.
Yeah, they can talk at the,
Right.
I mean, because if you're saying we're the ones who put this together,
you're not.
to go to the council for they're gonna kick it back to us anyway.
My recollection is the guy who mentioned that the zoning board is an attorney,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, putting it back on him, saying, look, we'd like to have some regulations. Do you have any good ideas on ways to write? We're not inclined to ban it entirely, come back with some regulations. And maybe he'll come back with something that's useful.
Someone,
So that would
someone
be-
out there, and
so
Bill,
that-
Bill was kind of touching on it, someone out there probably has a sensible ordinance on this. So we wouldn't have to start from scratch. I mean, like, when you guys ask me to do stuff, I'm pulling from different towns. I remember that town has a great, control for that problem.
I'd venture to say that there isn't one there, because this is really something new. I don't think,
There's a 2017 article I just read in
but
Belmar.
they're fighting it, but they're fighting it.
2017, exactly.
I think there's ordinances out there to have it. So-
I'm all for not recreating the wheel. I'm always for that.
But
I think you also have to make a note, and just a minor note, that there's also hybrid lawns out there that use artificial and real turf. You see a lot of NFL and college football teams using it, so I don't know if that needs to be put in there or not.
So, we're just convincing over here. I suggested to Zach that maybe council wants to appoint a couple of people to the zoning and planning board to his committee, and then they could do a little bit of research.
Maybe some of the other committees around town, too. I'm sure somebody in Environmental Commission would want to have a say on this.
Yeah, I think at least one member from each board is fine. So city council will have to do this, but I do still would like to hear the brainstorm of planning board moving forward, and so I think it's smart. Let's put it together, a small committee to look into it, and then I think it still should come back to the planning board, though, for approval.
Once you've had.
Yes.
Yeah.
vetted it, vetted
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
It won't be right away.
No.
Right?
so-
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Okay. Okay.
Anybody in the board care to be on that committee?
Anyone want to volunteer?
Vicky?
You asking me or telling me?
I think that was,
I think you've got free time on your hands now.
yeah, grimace. That looked like a yes.
That's why he wants a putting green in his backyard.
Bill,
Bob?
Great.
Okay, all right.
Perfect.
All right, so we'll just throw it back to you. And then-
Thank you. Yeah, yes.
We're not throwing
Thank you.
it, we're lobbing it back.
Yeah.
You'll need-
So city council will formulate a committee. That committee will bring those recommendations back to the planning board.
Correct.
And the planning board can make its recommendations back to council.
The committee should include, as Mike said, planning, zoning, environmental.
Right, yep.
Mr. Bodnar from zoning is the one who brought it up, so I think he would
Sure.
be a logical choice.
Yep.
Upon referral from the governing body, we have to determine consistency. So we have to send back a consistency recommendation one way or the other.
We're tabling it till we hear from them.
Yep.
Well, I'm just saying, that's what the code, that's what it says, so I'm
But
just
we're not,
telling
but
you.
we're not really moving anything yet, so we can table the consistency.
Table, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Does someone want to make that motion? Table?
Yeah. Sure, I'll make that motion. I'll make the motion to table the
Just took a job, sorry.
Second?
a second.
Okay.
Then a second.
Councilmember Yeager motions. Mr. Gorgon seconds. Mr. Gorgon? Yes. Mayor Mullick?
Yes.
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mr. Crowley? Yes. Mr. Lundholm?
Yes.
Mr. Badeusis?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Bezare?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion, final motion?
Motion.
Motion.
Good.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, good night, everyone.
Good night, all. Okay, let's see. Hey, is there anything you need?
Hey, Craig, you maybe got some emails from me, some questions.